This podcast is brought to you by Independent Building Advice. IBA acknowledges traditional owners of the land and waters this podcast is recorded on. If you find this episode helpful, follow us for more so we can continue putting out free value for all homeowners in Australia. It really goes a long way. Enjoy the episode.
Hi there, welcome back to the Home Building Podcast. Today we're talking about a very, very, very important subject which a lot of people don't understand, and you need to understand this, and that is, what are the hidden costs when it comes to building a house? Now, just to start off here, we are talking about building a new home. We're not talking about extending or renovating in this conversation. I'm referring more to infill areas, so we're already established areas, or also known as brownfield areas, where we're demolishing a house and building a new one, or this could be also relevant to a block in an estate. I'm not talking about farmhouse or rural sort of blocks, because that's a whole nother conversation. In fact, if you want to learn more about that, have a listen to our podcast about farmhouses and building on rural blocks, because we go into great detail about the hidden costs in that actual podcast. But this one will also cover that and more, but we're talking mainly about knocking down a house and rebuilding. So when it comes to your house being priced, the pricing basically with most builders, and again, every builder is differently, is broken into different sections. So first of all, you'll generally get, and this is if you're doing a custom design, by the way, but it could be similar if you're doing a standard design with variations. So you have the way a letter of quote normally is this is the base price of your home, and that's going to include your walls, your slab, your roof, all the main things you need to do it, all the preliminaries, such as, you need toilet on site, we need to do all this, we need to make sure that the site's prepped and there's a bin on site, all this kind of stuff that you pay for in the preliminary works. And builders would generally have a standard specification. So you got your main bulk of your quote, and that's in the base price at the top. Then you may have asked for independent quotes or isolated figures that has been put aside on that quote, so you can actually see if something's included or not included and the actual price for that. So let's say, for example, you don't know what it's going to cost for the flooring in your home. You might ask for, can you please give us a cost just for the flooring so we can decide if we want to put it in or take it out, okay? So that's itemized costs, which means that those items are not in the base price of the home. Then generally the last part of your agreement or in your quote will be the site works section, which we'll talk about first here. Now, site works is really preparing your land to get to site, and most of these figures won't be quotes, they'll be provisional sums. So that's things like, hey, we don't know what's under the soil yet, because we need a survey, engineering and working drawings for that, and we need to go out on site. So at this point, we're doing a very educated guess at what we think those figures will be, but we're not 100% sure yet. So this is that part. The site works part is what I'm going to cover first and talk to some of the big things on there, just to make sure we're covering them in general, and then we'll go on to other sections of hidden costs for you. Okay, so we'll start off with the site works part of the home, and that site works is preparing your block of land. You got a vacant block of land. You have to connect your power, your water, all your sewers, everything else like that to your property, to make sure that it goes from the land or the services on the land to your home. Okay, so they generally have to dig a trench for that. They have to actually make sure all that goes across to the actual house and is all connected up. So that will not be included in your house price, but often the builders will allow in their standard specification things to cater for that distance. So they'll say, we allow for 6 meters of run-in, which means it's going from the block to the actual home. Once it's all connected up, that's a big part of your house, and that's part of your site works. With the site works as well, you need to do things like you need to not only allow for the run-ins, but if you have a clay area, or if you actually have hard digging or something there, to dig that trench is going to be a lot more expensive. So your soil type is going to factor in as to some of the costs for your home. And that's a big part of this. So if you're in a clay site, or if you're at a limestone site, somewhere that's hard, that's one of the costs that are going to affect you, because the engineer's going to go out there and they're going to dig 3 or 4 holes on your block of land. They're going to burrow down, find out what soil type it is, how reactive it is. If it's beach sand, normally, by the way, west of the freeway or Marmion Ave, you'll find that it's normally just beach sand, right? In fact, anywhere on the western suburbs sort of area is normally beach sand. As you go towards the hills or the northeast of Perth, you'll find it's more of a clay sort of areas. But again, if you need more advice on this, reach out to us. We can tell you what suburbs have what. But that soil type is going to make a big difference. So the engineers will go out there, they'll dig 3 or 4 holes, they'll take soil samples back to the laboratory, and they'll determine what kind of soil type it is, and then that will affect your house on whether it's going to, if they have to do more things to upgrade it, they have to do more stuff on engineering for your slab details to make that home work better. So that's a hidden cost that you've got to be aware of, and that will also affect your run-ins and your trenches to the home. Also, when they're doing their reports, they're also going to look at your property and see what kind of wind affects that property, and they'll rate it N1, N2, and N3. N1 means your house gets a breeze, it's not too bad, you don't really have to do anything to the home. N2 is more serious, you might have to do tie downs where you tie the roof down, also things so that it doesn't blow away, and N3 is more expensive again and have to upgrade your home further and further. So that rating is done by the engineers, and they'll see what else you have to do over and above a standard plan or normal house design, and that's a hidden cost you need to be aware of. You normally, with most builders, you wouldn't find this out till you've actually signed up and paid a deposit, and that's when they order survey, engineering, working drawings. So that's a cost with the engineering. So on most blocks that are a standard sort of block that is sand, that will be a standard inclusion for you, so you're not paying anything more for it. It's not really a hidden cost because they have to build a slab, and they'll allow that standard detail for a standard slab on your property and for footings. It's only when you get engineering that's not normal or not sand or it's more difficult when they'll have to upgrade that, and that's a figure that you need to be aware of. So that's what you have to allow for site works. The same thing goes for run-ins. Most run-ins for most blocks, there'll be enough allowed for to actually cater from the actual property to your home. Okay, so you probably don't need to worry about additional run-ins unless your property's set way back or you've got a very large property. That's where it's a bit different. Okay, so it's not really a hidden cost, but it's something to know about. Some builders put 0 for site works and they say we'll work that out later. Now, I completely disagree with that. They should have some inkling or some idea of what the site work is going to be, and they should give you a figure that's pretty accurate. When you get to the final, when they actually fix those site works, because at the start it's just a provisional sum, it's not a quote for a lot of these items. If it's not fixed, when they do fix it for you after you've got survey, engineering, and working drawings, that figure shouldn't really change much, if at all. And ideally, if the builder's good, they should have allowed more than what they think it's going to be, and they'll credit you money back. So ideally, a good builder shouldn't be hitting you with a big surprise unless some more information that they didn't predict came out. Okay, so these things are normally included for you, but you need to be aware that they're there. So you got your run-ins, and you've got your slab details and your engineering. Provided all that's good, another thing you've got to be looking at is soakwells. So when the rain's on the roof, the rains hit your gutters, goes down your rainwater pipes down into the actual soil. You could have a spoon drain, which is a big piece of concrete that's basically like a half pipe, and as you go down there, it runs the water away from your footings of your home, normally about 1 metre away. All right, you have that all around your home. Not the greatest thing in the world, but it saves you money on soakwells. Soakwell actually normally is a big piece of concrete, and they'll actually bury that in the soil, and the water runs into that, and often they'll actually have holes in the concrete, and the water can just trickle out into the soil and disappear. And that's where engineering becomes a problem, is with the clay site, which means that you actually have to engineer these soakwells so that, because if it's clay and the water runs out, it doesn't go anywhere and just fills up and your house floats down the street. Can't have that, well, not quite float down the street, but it fills up because it's clay, the water can't go anywhere. So then you have to engineer these things so they're integrated. It gets a lot more complicated and you pay for it. So that's the thing with clay sites. This is how the price can really jump up. Okay, but sandy sites, not normally a problem, except for they go to dig these soakwells, and you're looking at about $5,000 to $6,000, right, for soakwells, depending on the builder and how many you need, size of your property. A lot of these figures I'm going to give you, I am going to work on something like a 300 square metre home, and these are just rough pricing, varies per builder, but I'm just trying to give you a really good indication of what you should be allowing for. So if you sit there and you start doing the maths behind all this stuff, you can actually tally all this up and get an idea of what's there. If you want a more accurate information, reach out to us to chat to us about where your site works, what we think it's going to be. It's not our first rodeo, so we should be able to give you some information. But I'm just trying to throw you some inkling of what these costs will be. Soakwells about $6,000. Now, if you've got a flat sandy block, that's awesome, right? Normally in an infill area, that's not the case. You might need some sort of retaining on your block. Now, different types of retaining you can do. There's lots of different types, but some basic ones is you can just do brickwork, where they just do a bit of bricks there, and that helps that level, and that just makes that work. Another one is a thing called panel and post, where they put some concrete footings in the ground and they have these panels that just slide on top of each other. That's a lot more cost effective. It's very common to do that. They're not the prettiest things in the world, in my opinion, but they are cost effective. They're normally down the dead side of your home if there's a bit of a level difference. And then the other one that's the most expensive and probably looks the best as well is those large limestone retaining blocks. They're, again, more expensive, but they're good, strong retaining walls. They're generally used, obviously for aesthetics, but also if you have a bigger wall, you need to make sure that they are actually retained properly, and you need to make sure that the blocks are stepped backwards and they're engineered. So that's a big one. They hold a lot more than the panel and post and the brickwork, and it's used on a case-by-case basis of what you like. If it's a smaller level that you need the retaining for, then you can get away with the panel and post or the brickwork, but bigger stuff needs the limestone. Now, let me just put a big caveat here. A lot of people go, hey, my friend can do the limestone blocks for me. I'm going to get them to do it for us, and that's great. Now, a lot of builders will turn around and say, no, we won't let you do that. Some will go, yes, we'll let you do it, but we do need to inspect those retaining walls afterwards. Now, a retaining wall is not just putting brickwork in there, putting limestone retaining walls in there. It's got to be done properly. You need to make sure you have a proper detail about how that wall is going to be done, because there's no builder worth their salt is going to go out there and build on a block that someone else has done the retaining walls without inspecting it properly. And if it's not done properly, which is often the case when people own a build, right, that builder's going to go, that doesn't work, it's not up to code, rip that thing down and redo it. Big cost, be careful. Another one with earthworks, other things. The builder will not build on something that they don't trust to be done properly. So just be careful of that. If your friend, your mate's going, I do it all the time, make sure they're doing it properly. Make sure you're seeing engineering detail properly, and make sure it's actually going to be built that way on site, because the builders will check that. So they're the main ones with as far as the levels go. You need to make sure you've got a flat sandy block and it's catering for you from that perspective, and that's what you're looking for with those retaining areas. So a great way to find this information clearly, and this is what we often do, is order a survey of the land. That's going to tell us all the levels, where all the features are, like, for example, the power, water, or that on the block, where we have to run into. That gives us that little bit of extra information, which is really good information, and that to spend a little bit more money at the start to find that information out, you're going to get more accurate information, less surprises down the track, and you're going to have a much happier experience. So a survey will give us the majority of this information. We won't have the engineering details, but we have a good idea of what each suburb's engineering is going to be, so we can predict what that's going to be quite accurately. Okay. Now, the hidden costs that I'm covering today, I can't cover everything. There's so much we can talk about, and that's where you need that good advice on a case-by-case basis from someone who knows what they're talking about, giving that advice up front. This is something that we do all the time. Often we've got people come to us and say, our builder or our salesperson's told us the Siteworks is this, and we've gone, there's no way that your Siteworks is that. Okay, you're missing all these other things. And if you look at it from a builder's perspective or a salesperson's perspective, they know they're competing with you and these two other builders, right? And they know that if they don't win this, they don't get paid a commission. So not always, but sometimes what they do is they undercut their Siteworks. They give you a lower figure. It's not a quote, it's just a provisional sum. It's just a rough figure to make it appear cheaper. A client naive to building or not used to this goes, oh, they're cheaper, we're going to go with them, only to find out once they pay their deposit, which is non-refundable, 3 months down the track, that, oh my gosh, actually the Siteworks is the same price as the other builders or more expensive, because that salesperson didn't do it. And the logic from the salesperson, not always, but sometimes, is, well, they're now emotionally connected, they've now paid this money, they're more likely going to go ahead, I'll just roll the dice. Whereas you may have got better value from the other people who are being more upfront, more honest with you. Right? So you want to try and get as much of this hidden costs up front as you possibly can. So they're the really big ones that you hear about a lot of, and that's hidden costs with your site. But there's other things that you've got to allow for. Now, most builders will probably include about 6 metres of driveway. So that's going to get you from your actual garage to the front of your block. Now, your block doesn't go to the street. You've got the verge in between you and the actual part of your block that starts. Normally that's about 3, sometimes 4, 5, 6 metres. So all your services will be on your actual block, not on the verge. And generally where you can see where the verge starts is normally where the letterbox would normally go on your block of land. So if you're looking at the street and you're demolishing your home and where you see all the letterboxes, that's generally the start of your block. But although the verge isn't owned by you, you have to look after it. Okay, the Shire will look after the footpath, but you have to do the crossover. So the crossover is that bit of driveway that goes from your block of land crossing over the actual verge to the road, so you can drive your car in there. You have to pay for that. Some Shires give you a bit of a rebate, give you a bit of money back on that, but you have to pay for that and look after that while your car's driving over it, during the build. But also, if trucks come along and they break the curb and that, you have to pay fees to the Shire as a bond to make sure they don't break it. If they don't break it, you get it back, but these are heavy trucks. So these are all things you need to allow for the site works. A good crossover is about $2,000, depending on what materials you use. Some of these Shire fees and bonds and that, you might be looking at $1,500 to $2,000, but some of that you also get back if it's not broken or or nothing's happened to it, but you need to allow some money for that. So these are costs that you need to allow for. For that, obviously, you've got to landscape the front verge, but I'll come to that a little bit later. But these are some costs you've got. You've got Shire fees that you're looking at. If you have to go to planning, so planning department, so you've got two different Shires. You've got building approval, which is getting the home approved, saying that you mean the R codes, you're not affecting your neighbours, it's being built properly. And the other one's planning, which means that you're not affecting the street. They're looking more of a macro point of view. They're looking at the whole area, making sure you fit in. If you're breaking any rules like overlooking or levels or heights and that, then you'd have to go to planning, and there's fees involved with that. And there's also delays. It takes 3 months to get that approved on average. And basically, you can't get building approval until you got planning approval. So this could cost you time, and I'll get into another hidden cost, which we'll get to a bit later, about potentially getting a price rise from the builder for delaying things. So the things we've got to factor into. So building approval you have to allow for, but those fees that you get generally in your site works is Shire fees that you need to allow for. If your block's hard to get to, you have a thing called a concrete pump. That means that the concrete trucks come along, they have to pour the slab to your block. The concrete driver will decide this on site whether you need it or not. So the builder doesn't know if you need it or not. So what they'll do is they'll charge you extra money for what's called a concrete pump. And that is that the pump goes from the truck, pumps that concrete onto your slab because the truck can't get near the property. And what a lot of builders do, they will just include this anyway, whether you need it or not, because if the driver decides at the time that they need it, well, they want to already have the fees in there. They don't want to come back to you and ask you for more money. So a concrete pump's something you might need. Now, another thing, with your builder may be including these in the base price of the house. Okay, and it should be listed on the specification form, and they may not be. So you want to ask these questions because it will come back to haunt you. A concrete pump might be $1,200 to $2,000. So it's something, if you need it, allow for it now. Okay. And one other thing you got to be aware of is scaffolding. Like the hard thing about building is that every builder writes up their write-ups differently. So scaffolding is what the trades need to stand on to build parts of your house, right? And what some builders do is they have their base price and they put their scaffolding cost in their site works, which other builders would include it in their base price. So you just got to be wary of what you're looking for with your site works to make sure that, ask questions. Shouldn't that be included in the base price? Or if you're comparing two quotes and one's got something listed in the site works separately and the other builder doesn't, ask them, is that included in the base price or not? Or should you be including that? And obviously always get it in writing. If it's not in writing, you're not getting it. So make sure that's very clear from that perspective. But let's move on to the next part that we're going to talk about, and that is hidden things that you may need on your property depending where your property is located, and we'll go through them at the moment. So the main ones I'm going to cover here is BALs, bushfire attack levels, noise attenuation, things like this, which we'll go through that your block, depending on location, that may actually require, and costs associated with that. So BAL is a bushfire attack level. Now this is the government basically looking at your property and going, if there's going to be a fire in their area, it could be a park, could be some land, whatever it might be locally. Can we protect your home, or what do we need to do to protect your home to make sure the embers from the flames doesn't burn down your house, or give it the best chance of not burning down? So they apply a BAL level to it. So BAL, bushfire attack level, is no risk is the lowest, which means the house is fine. You don't really have to do anything to it. The one above that is 12.5. 12.5 means that there's certain things, that's the most basic level, that they don't want you to have, so your house is protected. For example, evaporative air conditioning. Evaporative air conditioning sucks the air from outside into the home, and that's where you normally have a window slightly open, and cool air will pull it through the home for you. The problem, if you had a fire around the corner and the embers go through there, it will suck it through evaporative air conditioner will suck those embers into the home and basically burn your house for you. Very dangerous. You don't want that in a dangerous area, a fire danger area. So they say you can't have that. Things like they want to seal under the doors. You don't want to have normal fly screens there. You want to have a steel mesh there to stop the embers coming through. Otherwise, the normal fly screens would melt. So that's a 12.5. It's probably about $6,000 to $7,000 to do that to your home. Again, it's got to get quoted properly. A lot of the things that they actually ask for at 12.5, although you're paying more money than what you may want to, a lot of the things that they actually tell you to include are actually pretty good. They're actually good things to do. Like they're not bad thing. Like the metal fly screen is not bad for security. Having reverse cycle is better than having reverse cycle air conditioning is better than having evaporative air conditioning. So a lot of those things are actually not too bad. You are paying more, but they have got a benefit to it. So 12.5. The next one is 19. 19 is getting a lot more involved. There's a lot more you have to do to it. You're paying a lot more money. It could be $12,000, $13,000 for this. Then it goes to 29, and then up from there, and you're getting into more and more expenses. 29, 40 FZs, basically a fire zone. Basically, if there's a fire around you, good luck. That's what you need to look at with your rating. Okay, you can look this up online, what your block is. Do you need that in your area? And it's just something to be aware of. So it can really jump up the costs for you. You need to try and find that up front. Your consultant that you're speaking to should be looking into this for you and giving this number up front. The other thing with that you've got to be aware of, I had a client quite a few years ago. They had bought into an estate, got this block. They were on a really tight budget, and we checked the BAL of that block. New estate titles hadn't come out at this point in time. They bought their block of land because it didn't have a BAL on it at all. It's a low risk. Didn't have to spend any money on it. Turns out that the council changed their mind, and they did actually make that a BAL 12.5. The client was irate. They were so angry and upset. Why you can't change it on us, blah, 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 but they can. And do you know what? It's terrible, but it's also bad luck. It's just literally bad luck. At the time they bought it, they didn't know. Council changed their mind. You can't fight these things. So that's how it works. So it is something that you can cater for or try your best to avoid, but on the occasion, councils can change their mind. That's going to be aware of. Side note here, and we do cover this in our rural podcast, but often it's done on tree location. So we've had on bigger properties where we've actually just moved the house a metre and we don't have a fire, we don't have a BAL at all. It's low risk because they go, oh, it's got to be 20 metres from the local tree, and it was 19, so we just moved it and it was fine. So you want your people doing it. There may be ways around it, but that's a case-by-case basis. So that's the BAL. Next one is noise attenuation. Noise attenuation is normally something that kicks in when you're near an airport or a busy road, and they're concerned about the amount of noise that's travelling by to people who are living there. So they want you to upgrade your home to something like maybe double glazing or something that's going to stop the noise getting in, and that's something that they're doing. Now, you're probably looking about $4 or $5 grand for this to your home. The issue with this sometimes is if you need a BAL and noise attenuation, those two often contradict each other about what they recommend you should do, and therefore you have to upgrade both of them to another area, and that's where the price can really jump up, so be wary of that. I'm not a big fan necessarily of both of these, but that's my personal opinion, because I think sometimes it's council sort of covering themselves of what you should do, but if you want to live near the freeway and you're not worried about the noise, then isn't that your own prerogative? But that's my thoughts on that one there. But these are things you need to be wary of, and it's not an option. It's something you have to do in certain areas, and it can cost you a lot of money. So those two there, BAL 12.5 being about $7 grand, and noise pressure about $4 or $5 grand. You might be looking at 12 grand. Maybe more if they clash with each other. Can jump up really quickly, and you need to know about this up front. The next one there is 7-star. So 7-star is energy efficiency. So your house is rated in summer, autumn, winter, and spring through a NatHERS test, and there's also a performance solution, different ways of testing your home as to how comfortable it is all year round. Now, 7-star is a rating. It used to be 6-star a few years ago. Now it's 7-star, which means that you have to upgrade your home to a real level that it's comfortable, and ideally it's going to save you on energy as far as turning the air conditioner on or heater on or whatever it might be, because your house is comfortable. And I tell you what, most 7-star homes are beautiful. I've been into them and go, wow, this is lovely. In the middle of winter, you're walking, actually, this is comfortable. I don't need to turn the aircon on. The thing is, though, that you do need to spend extra money to get to 7-star indefinitely. So a big part of that is solar orientation, making sure your home is orientated nicely. But that's not the only thing. They look at They look at your windows, they look at your room sizes, the colours you're choosing, materials you're using, such as flooring. There's a whole lot of calculations that go into this. And they'll say to you, sorry guys, your home is only a 6-star rating or a 3-star rating, or it's 3 stars in summer, but it's a 9-star in winter. And you have to make sure that it rates 7-star throughout. In doing that, you're spending a lot more money. So this will vary as per each home. I would say allow $8,500 as side money in your site works, provisional sums, to cater for whatever that may be. So these assessors, what they do is they look at it and go, okay, we've assessed your home, this is what the rating is, and they'll propose to you solutions to solve or to make the house a 7-star home. So they might say, I'll do permacav in the insulation in the walls, or upgrade, put anti-con in, or do bigger insulation, or do double glazing, whichever. They will make recommendations, and ideally they should default to what's the most cost-effective solution for you. Again, a lot of this stuff is good stuff to have in your home, and it will make a difference, but it's another cost you got to worry about, and this stuff can really mount up. So 7 stars are a really important one to look at. But now we're going to move on to what I call the classics. The classics are hidden costs that people normally talk about, right? This is when you speak to your friend or your uncle and auntie who built 3 years ago. Watch out for the hidden costs, and they normally list these ones. And they're right, you should watch out for them. So this is flooring, blinds or curtains, painting, right? Air conditioning, right? Landscaping, your clothesline, your letterbox. Okay, these are the main ones that people are talking about in this sort of section here. And the other one in that is fencing, okay? So fencing is roughly about $120 a linear metre. For fencing, that's for colour-bond fencing down the side of your home. Obviously, these quotes are rough quotes. Speak to a landscaper about this or a fencing expert. And then generally you are meant to split that with your neighbours, 50-50. And always interesting to have those conversations with your neighbours, because that's when you find out true colours. But if you are doing demolishing a home, building a new home, and the fence is not your favourite colour, but it looks good, well, it's pretty hard to ask your neighbour to rip that down and replace it. And they might give you a bit of resistance because they're going, well, we don't want to spend the money and we're happy with it. A good way to go there, if you don't want to have that, is offer your neighbours, we'll just pay for the whole thing ourselves if you're cool with us changing it. And that's a big issue that you need to look at. So with fencing, if you do that, it's normally split, but it's a cost. $120 a linear metre. If you work on that, it will get you pretty close to where you need to be. Another fencing type is temporary fencing. It's come in now with law that if you have a house that's got your building on it, you need to put fencing up there so your little kids, I guess, or pets that can't get onto the block and hurt themselves, which I think's, or drunk people on the street. That's not a side one. But no, it's basically to give it a bit of protection there. It is a cost that you need to look at. I'd allow probably $1,100, $1,200 depending on the scope of what you're doing. Another part of that is if you are knocking down a neighbour's fence, you do have to put temporary fencing up. So, you're giving them protection of their property, which is fair enough. And at the same time, though, that if they have pets, the pets can't escape into your property. So you do need to allow for temporary fencing if you're playing with that. And that is there's a real one that you need to be aware of. And for the front of the property, that is not an option. That is absolutely, you have to do that. So allow that money in there for you. So let's talk about flooring. So there's so many different types of flooring, but we'll talk about the big ones. So you've got carpet, probably the most cost effective. I'm a fan of carpet in the bedrooms. That some people aren't. Each to your own. I'm not a big fan of carpet throughout the whole house. Each to your own there as well. But carpet is basically one thing you need to allow for there. That's most cost effective. There's different types of carpet. Then you got tiling throughout your house. Often 600 by 600 tiles is nice. The bigger the tile, the more expensive it is. There's different types of tiling. You got things like hybrid flooring. Hybrid flooring is a type of flooring. You got vinyl plank. So there's vinyl flooring, there's vinyl plank flooring. There are different types of flooring that you've got there. Then you've got the engineered timber, which is beautiful throughout your whole house. Polished concrete. You can just go. There's all sorts of different options you can look for in your home. If you actually go to our podcast, which is the Trevor's Carpet podcast, or if you speak to the Wall to Wall podcast with Dom, we talk more about carpet. With the Trevor's Carpet, we talk about all different types of flooring types. We don't speak about tiles in that one, but it gives you a really broad idea of which ones to go for. People hear vinyl plank and think, oh, we don't want vinyl. Vinyl plank and vinyl is very different. So very, very different price-wise, but also finish. And vinyl plank's better than what its reputation is. It's actually quite good. So something to look into, but that's what you need to look for. So you probably, for a 300 square metre home, if you're looking at something like hybrid or vinyl plank or tiles, I'd probably be allowing $12,000 to $15,000 for carpet to the bedrooms and that kind of flooring throughout the rest of the home. Again, this is very rough figures, but you might round that up to 18 for your figures if you're playing at home, filling out your bingo card or what things cost. But then if you're going to go for more expensive tiles, if you're going to go for, engineered floor, it can really jump up. So that's just rough figures to allow for at this point in time. Internal wall painting. So the builder, anything that the builder does, like gyprock, for example, the builder must paint that, right? Legally, they have to paint gyprock. Gyprock's what goes in your ceiling, right? So all that plasterboard. So they need to paint all that. All your eaves outside will be painted. Your doors will all be painted. So we're not talking about these things, right? Or if you have a feature wall that's painted, that's painted. So the figure that we're talking about is internal wall painting, and that is painting your wall. So if you're doing a float and set, so plaster, and they'll generally leave it white, right? That's painting on top of that. So you might have an undercoat and 2 more coats, whichever. That's what we're talking about here. I would probably allow $10,000 to $12,000, depending on the builder, to paint that part of the home. And that's a figure that's not actually included normally, because that's a way for builders to save it. A lot of clients want to do it themselves. I couldn't think of anything worse. Again, if you go to our podcast, and we've had 2 lots of painters on there, which is worth listening to their podcast about best way to do that if you're going to do it at home. You can save money if you do it yourself. Hot tip, what I'll do is get your friends over for a housewarming party, tell them to dress down, that's the theme, cook a barbecue, make it smell really, really good for them, and say you don't get fed until you've painted a wall. That's a great way to get your house painted. Hot tip for you on the side there. But that's painting. So painting is something you need to allow for. You can move in, right, and do no painting, and that's totally fine. And I do like that idea sometimes, because if you're not sure what to do colour-wise, actually living in the house for a bit, and this is actually a hot tip for anything, actually living in the house with your partner and going, actually, I think that wall should be whatever. When you're living there, you can actually see the light of that room. You get better feel for it. You know, you think, oh, actually, we're going to go a dark colour, but it's going to make the room look too small. When you're living there, it's a great way. So you don't have to rush in for that kind of stuff. But the side note there, that if you don't do anything in the first 3 to 6 months of moving into it, you're never going to do it. Okay, so you've got to get that done, put it on the list there. But it's a good way to save money, but it's something you need to allow for. So then you got curtains, blinds. So the cheapest blinds you can do, or the cheapest way to block out the sun, is get newspaper and just stick that on the windows. That is definitely the most cost-effective way of doing it. Not the best look. I don't recommend it, but hey, if it blocks out the light, it blocks out the light. But in all seriousness, the best way to go is to do, you can do basically the blinds, the Venetian blinds that go down. They're quite cheap. You see them in a lot of investment places. To go basically the horizontal blinds that you've got there, they're also quite cost-effective. I like the blinds on a roller. To go cheap with the blinds there, you're probably looking about $2,000, maybe $3,000 for the whole home. To do the roller blinds, the block-out blinds, you're probably looking about $5,000 to $6,000 for the whole house. Again, based on a 280, 300 square metre home, this is all super rough. And then if you're going to go curtains are a lot more expensive. They can get really expensive because they're normally designed a certain way. You've got to have tracks, the whole thing. They can really jump up, but we're just giving you a rough idea of pricing. I'd say if you're going to do curtains to the whole house, you could be up around the $25,000, $30,000 mark quite quickly. But we've got experts that would put on to you to make that work for you. So then air conditioning, you've got reverse cycle air conditioning, you've got evaporative air conditioning. I generally find with air conditioning, most builders are pretty competitive in this area. So I often find getting air conditioning done separately is, you're not saving that much money, and ideally if you get it through the builder, you go that way. But what you really want to check is the amount of kilowatts that builder's allowed for you. A lot of people get air conditioning and go, oh, I've got air conditioning, reverse cycle, great, tick. No. The size of your home, is it powerful enough? If they give you a really cheap reverse cycle air conditioning, it's not powerful enough, you're going to have to upgrade that thing later, right? So I would allow for a really decent size one, depending on the size of your home, 15, 17 kilowatts, whichever. What happens with that, though, is they go to a air conditioning engineer who will work out your airflow, what power you need, and they will give you that figure normally at pre-start, and that's normally down the track. So make sure you've got a decent sized air conditioner up front. It's worthwhile taking your plans to an air conditioning supplier up front and go, can you give us an idea of what we'd need for this size home? And then use that as a litmus test for builders. I would say 15 to 17 grand for a half decent air conditioning is a good allowance to allow for that. The other one is landscaping. Landscaping's how long's a piece of string? If you've got your backyard, front yard, this can jump up. So if you're buying in an estate, generally the developer will include fencing and landscaping for you in the price of your home. They're not doing this because they're lovely, nice people. They're doing it because they want your street look great so that more people can drive down your street when the house is finished. And guess what? Looks amazing. We want to buy here too in the next release. So that's why they do it. So, but it is an expense you don't have to worry about. And normally the way that works is they go, hey, fencing and landscaping is included. You go, that's great. And then you go, when you get to it, they go, here's $3,000 towards your landscaping. By the way, you can get some lawn and that plant. You don't get a lot for it. So just be aware of that. So look, I've got clients that have spent $400,000 on gardening on landscaping, and I've got clients that have spent $10,000. It's really how far you want to go. If you're going to have swimming pools in the back and things like that, swimming pools about $50,000 plus. That's with everything, not just the pool, but also the paving, the whole thing, pool fencing. So I would say if you allow, anywhere on the cheap side, say 20 right through to $50,000, $70,000 for landscaping, that's where that's a rough figure depending on what you want to do. It's super broad, but you always get a landscaper out there to give you a bit of a quote up front if you really want to get more of an idea of that. Okay, but that's something that's not included for you. Clothesline, that's something you just go to Bunnings, get a clothesline, letterbox. I mean, if you want to get a proper built one, a brick one, get the builder to do that. It's hard to get brickies, get them to do that. If you want to get one from Bunnings, it's $100. It's not that expensive. So these are things you need to allow for getting the house finished and prepped. Once you got to this point here, your house is pretty much ready to go. Okay, you've pretty much got most of the hidden costs in that home for you. There's just a few other items there that you need to think about, but your house is done, dusted, ready to go. And obviously you got things like furniture and stuff like that on top of that, but this is for the actual building part. A few other costs. If you have an existing home and you want to demolish it, I would allow $20,000 for that. That's rough price, depends on your home, what's involved. 20 grand, 22 grand, something like that is roughly where most demolition quotes come in. So get a couple of quotes, but yeah, about $22,000 what you're looking at for demolition. Some people say 30, 40 grand, it's not that high. But again, depending on what you're looking at. So allow 20 grand for demolition. Another one that probably catches people out, and this is like, the level of specification, especially for the kitchen, what you're getting, overhead cupboards, pot drawers, making sure that, what you think you're getting and what you're actually getting can really jump up. You can spend a lot of money on your kitchen very, very quickly. But a big one that people don't realize what they're getting is appliances. You got your oven, hot plate, and your range hood are your main appliances, and obviously you got to get a dishwasher. But just what your builder's allowing. Again, if people go, oh, I've got a 900 hot plate, I really want that. That's normally a tick for a lot of people. But if you do a bit, deeper research into it, you might be getting the world's worst hot plate, but it's 900 wide. So that's something where people can spend a lot of money very, very quickly with appliances. So see what you want to do. Some people go, we want to buy our own appliances and want to bring it to the home. Builders will go, okay, well, if you want to do that, sure, but we're going to charge you an insurance fee, and that means that if it gets stolen on site, that it's insured. Otherwise, we won't let you do that. That's something you got to talk to your builder about. I've got my own thoughts on that, but just have a chat to them. There are a lot of things stolen on site. It's just something you've got to be wary of. So some builders go, yeah, cool, bring your own stuff. We've got no problems with that. I like that. Other builders go, no, you have to do that through us. That's something you need to look at, but it's the upgrading of it that might catch you out and you spend a lot more money than what you feel. But it's your kitchen, got to get that right. So yeah, just something to think about. Now, the other hidden cost, and this is a massive one, okay. When you sign up with a builder, you have got your price is held for different points. So before you sign up, so you generally sign what's called a preliminary plans agreement, and that is you've got a design done up. There's some more information that's needed for engineering, working drawings, survey, all that stuff. But they've given you enough money to tell you what the price is of the home, and they want a deposit off you, and they want to take money off you, and you just sign an agreement saying you're giving them permission to create working drawings, engineering, everything else for them to actually build the house, okay? Or to actually get contracts out so you can then decide to build the home. Up until the second they give you that price has been delivered and you haven't signed up, before you signed up, they can give you a price rise, okay? And that's their prerogative. If you sign up with them, you sign a preliminary agreement, that generally will hold the price for normally about 2 months, maybe 3 months. And in that time, they have to order survey engineering working drawings during that price point, during that time period, and your price won't change. If for some reason it's delayed past that price point, they can give you a price rise between that agreement ending and you signing your building contracts. So often they'll say you've got 5 to 10 days to sign your building contracts, we'll give you a price rise. They can do that because you're changing from one agreement to the next agreement. The next time they can give you a price rise, and this is all by the way if you have a fixed price contract, next time they give you a price rise is that if you sign your contract, from signing the contract to actually starting, if you delay that, they can pass on an increase. And the way you can delay that, that's not you necessarily delaying it yourself. That means that if you don't get finance in time, if you don't have the land prepared in time, in other words, the house isn't demolished or you haven't done something and there's something stopping them from actually physically building on that property, or if you haven't basically got planning approval or you've delayed it in some other way, if it's your fault, and when I say your fault, that it's not their fault, is probably a better way of saying it, then they can pass you on an increase, right? And this is going to catch a lot of people out. So if you are going for planning approval because you need to, then you want to make sure that planning is all done and dusted and they've had time to get into council well and truly before you sign that contract, okay? Because if that's not going to be done in time, you will probably get a price increase because the builders, in their mind, they've gone, we're holding it for your whole price to get you from when you sign your deposit to getting the site 6 months, right? So anything beyond that, we haven't allowed for, so you might get a price. And if prices are going up about 1.5% a month at the moment, then they need to make sure they're profitable and they might pass it on to you. So you really want to be organised and get your ducks in a row because they could hit you at any particular time. Okay, so that's one you got to worry about as far as prices increases go. If you go cost plus is whatever the cost is plus margin plus GST. That means that all the risk is on you if prices go up and not the builder. Well, in this market, you're in for a world of hurt because there's no limit to how much the prices can go up and it's not a problem for the builder. It's always your problem. So just be wary of that. I'd always try and go fixed price, but that's my personal opinion. But there is a time to do cost plus. I just don't think it's it. Okay, so look, we've covered a lot of hidden costs today. Hopefully this helps you. Look, we're giving very broad answers to what things cost. The reality is that there's such variety out there. There's such a big difference out there of what you can actually do with your particular site. We need to look at it to be more accurate. We do really try to be incredibly accurate with clients up front, and if we don't know what things cost, we'll tell you up front. But the reality is the more you know going in with the right advice, right information, the less X factor you're going to have later, and you're going to have a much better experience. I hope it helps. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Leave comments below, and we're happy to respond to you. If you think I've missed something today, I'm sure I've missed lots, please, or something you've been caught with your own experience, leave a comment. We'd love to hear it. People who read the comments, it's going to help them with their journey. But the more you know building up front, the better. We just don't like people getting stung. Thanks very much.